We're just going to break down the games, give you the best information we can. And the best place to start, we know what it is. Alabama, Texas, in Austin. And I'll tell you, I'm really excited to watch this one, even though, as you all know, the spread makes it seem like this one could be a little bit one-sided. Alabama now a 20-point favorite in the Betfred Sportsbook. The over-under is 65.5. And when I look at this game, a few things stand out. First of all, neither of these teams played a super marquee game last Saturday. Neither was super on the radar. But I do think, to their credit, both teams, including Texas, and I know we always make fun of Texas, they did exactly what you would have expected and what you would have wanted from them in week one. For Alabama, it was business as usual. We've talked on this podcast, the Aaron Torres podcast, about really just the idea that this is a revenge tour type season, right? You lose in the national championship game, a game where you're banged up, a game that you could have won. Are you going to come out locked in and ready to reclaim what's yours if you're Alabama? Well, week one seems to indicate that they are ready to do just that. They beat Utah State 55-0. And while it's Utah State, whatever, I think it's worth noting a few things. One, offensively, again, you got exactly what you wanted out of that offense. Bryce Young didn't throw a lot of deep balls, didn't have to throw a lot of deep balls because of the field position his defense set him up with, but finished with 195 yards passing. And one thing that stood out to me, Nick Saban talked in the offseason, Bryce Young reminds him of a great point guard. It's not about throwing it deep. It's not about targeting one guy. It's about distributing it to everybody, getting everybody involved. That's exactly what happened for Alabama in Saturday's win over Utah State. I noticed this stat. I thought it was pretty interesting. 3 different receivers with 5 catches, 6 different receivers with at least 2 catches each. That says to me that Bryce Young's making sure that everybody's involved, everybody feels involved, and it had that offense hum. And also worth noting, by the way, Jahmyr Gibbs, how about this? 9 yards per carry on 10 carries. He was awesome, as we were expecting. And you know what else we were expecting and we got on Saturday in Tuscaloosa? That defense looks as good as we were anticipating. Utah State, I think it's easy to Utah State. Who's Utah State? Utah State won 11 games last year. Utah State had a top 20 offense last season. They were held by Alabama. How about this? 136 yards of total offense for Utah State in that win. And after the game, Blake Anderson, their head coach, said that's the best college football team that I have ever seen. So if you wanted a little hyperbole, and maybe it's not hyperbole to lead week one, we may have gotten it with Alabama already being called one of the best teams that one coach has ever seen. On the flip side, I'll give credit where it's due. Texas, it's very much the same. It's week one. Quinn Ewers is your quarterback. There was controversy in how he was named. You want to see this team on the field. There were preseason injuries. We find out that Jaleel Billingsley, their projected starting tight end, is suspended. You want to see what this team is going to look like in week one, and they did everything that you would want. They beat Louisiana Monroe 52-10. Quinn Ewers pretty much does what you expect, 66% completion percentage, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like Bryce Young, really distributed the ball quite well. 3 different receivers with at least 3 catches, 5 with at least 2 catches. And one thing that stood out to me just looking at the box score, I'll be honest, I didn't get a chance to watch. I don't get the Longhorn Network. But Xavier Worthy, who was the Big 12 Player of the Year, only had 2 catches for 24 yards. And so I think Steve Sarkisian very much didn't try to put too much on tape, just like Alabama wasn't planning on putting too much on tape. They get the win, and to their credit, the defense, which we're going to talk about in a minute, did what it was supposed to do against a bad Louisiana Monroe team. 259 yards of total offense allowed. They allowed just 2.2 yards per carry to Louisiana Monroe. With that said, while I can sit here and hype up Texas and how good they looked against Louisiana Monroe, I'll be honest, listen, I'm not going to bury the lead. I'm not going to avoid the tough conversation. I do think it's an uphill battle against Alabama on Saturday. And what's interesting about this game is I think even Texas fans are kind of like, you know what? If we can just get out of this game without getting embarrassed, if we can get out of this game without any major injury, we'll take it. Now, maybe you're talking to different Texas fans than I am, but from what I've seen from the Texas fan base, that seems to be the sentiment, which is, hey, let's just not get embarrassed. If we can keep this close, if we can keep this respectable, let's do it. And I don't even know if they can do it. And it's not, again, an anti-Texas thing. Texas isn't back. That's not what this is about. This is about Texas is in year 2 of a rebuild under Steve Sarkisian. have something like 40 something new players in their program. And they're going up against not only the number one team in the country, but one of the best versions of Alabama that we have potentially ever seen. And again, I know it's early for hyperbole. I don't think that is too far out of line. When I look at this game, specifically my concern when it comes to Texas is pretty straightforward. I tweeted this out on Monday. If you follow me on Twitter at Aaron_Torres, you probably saw it. Texas is starting 2 true freshmen along the offensive line. Now, part of that is one of their projected starters, Junior Angalau, who was a returnee from last year, got hurt in fall camp, is out for the season. But if you want to know just one fact about this game that has me concerned and should have everyone concerned, it's that they are starting 2 true freshmen. One of them was a 5-star. The other one wasn't even like an elite recruit coming out along that offensive line against what will ultimately be the best defensive line they see all year, potentially the best defensive line in all of college football. Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, those guys are going to eat. And I do think for Quinn Ewers, it is about getting the ball out as quickly as he can to his guys. You know, how do you get a Bijan Robinson involved in this kind of game? That's what's going to be interesting to me. And I think they got to score and score in a hurry, because I think the longer the game goes, the more the Alabama defense gets locked in, it's going to be go time. The other reason I'm concerned about Texas coming into this game, by the way, and again, this isn't a like anti-Texas thing. I'm concerned about their defense, and it goes back to everything that we talked about all fall long, all summer long, all spring long. I talked about it on this podcast. I talked about it on the Aaron Torres podcast. Everybody wants to sit there and say, oh, Texas, they crushed it in the portal. Well, they did, but who did Texas bring in? They brought in Quinn Ewers, a quarterback. They brought in Isaiah Nayor, who unfortunately is injured. They brought in Ajayi Hall, wide receiver from Alabama, who will be back for this game. They brought in Jaleel Billingsley, a tight end from Alabama, who's not available for this game. So on top of the fact that you're already missing a few key offensive guys, did you hear what I just said? Quarterback, 2 wide receivers, tight end. Is this defense any better than it was last year? Because I think everyone, and I don't think there's anyone out there really picking Texas to win this game. But with the excitement around Quinn Ewers, the excitement around Texas, I keep going back to, how are they going to get stops? Last year, they ranked in, 110th or something like that nationally in rush defense. Beyond that, in that 5-game losing streak, 100th nationally overall in total defense, I should mention as well. During that 5-game losing streak that they had, remember, they finished 5-7 with a 5-game losing streak in the mix there. They gave up 30-plus points in all 5 of those losses. We all remember the meltdown against Kansas, 57 points. They also gave up 31 to a bad Iowa State team, 30-plus to an Oklahoma State team that didn't score a ton. Obviously, 50-plus to Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams back in those days. Is this defense really improved? What gives you the reason to believe that this defense is improved? So I could go on and on. What I would tell you, my official bet, I'm not telling you to bet it. I'm just telling you what my official bet is. Betfred Sportsbook. I am taking Alabama in the first half. I just think they're going to jump out. I think this is a revenge tour game for Alabama. I do worry about the back door being open late. If I had to give an unofficial pick, I would go ahead and say, 45-20 Alabama. In that case, they would cover. I do worry a little bit about the back door. So let's just stick with, as I said, I'm going to take the first half for Alabama in this game.